Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Latest, your number one source for news, updates, rumors, opinions, and you guessed it, the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host, Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and today we've got a lot to talk about. So we're going to start with Jake Fisher, NBA insider. He had some recent notes on Atlanta's roster situation, that developing situation with Caleb Houston in that 15th and final roster spot. And then we're going to dive into Kristaps Porzingis' surprising center ranking above a certain NBA player, a very notable NBA player who actually just won an NBA championship. Our own KP got ranked above him in a certain ranking, so we're going to talk all about that and talk about why he might potentially be ranked over him. Next, we're going to cover some interesting information that Larry Nance Jr., the former Hawk, the guy who was with the team just last year, who made a very strong impression on the organization and is forever loved here in Atlanta from his small contributions on the court, because he did end up getting hurt. But nonetheless, he made some comments about Zaccharie Risacher, last year's number one overall pick, what we could potentially be expecting from him in the coming years, especially this upcoming season. It's going to have big implications for Atlanta's future if what Larry said is true. And then finally, we're going to close with an in-depth discussion about Trae Young and whether this could be the year he makes a serious push for All-NBA and maybe even most valuable player. I wrote an article about it. I hope you guys have read that and tuned in, but I'm going to kind of defend my case a little bit here because, of course I will. So as always, be sure to hit that like button. We're going to get into all of this right about now. So let's start with that roster situation. So when it was first reported that the Hawks were signing former Orlando Magic forward Caleb Houston, the automatic assumption was that he would, fill Atlanta's 15th and final roster spot. I mean, it was reported before they signed N'Faly Dante, so that was technically the last roster spot. But then it came out that Houston's deal was an Exhibit 10 contract rather than a guaranteed deal. A pretty interesting twist. It took forever for that Houston deal to finally be made official, and I guess now we can see why. But what does that mean? Essentially, it gives him the opportunity to compete for a roster spot in training camp, but it surely does not secure his place on the final roster. I mean, not at all. As for right now, the Hawks have 14 players under standard contracts and 3 players signed to two-way deals. That leaves them with some flexibility, and here's the key. Atlanta seriously does not have to fill that 15th spot. They don't have to go into the season with all 15 guys. According to NBA insider Jake Fisher, several teams around the league, including the Hawks, Celtics, Lakers, Clippers, and a handful of others, are expected to keep just one open roster spot going into the season. So that's kind of the general assumption around the league with the Atlanta Hawks right now. Could they do something different and then also sign Houston to that deal and kind of lock in that roster? Absolutely. But right now it's looking like they could just go into the season with 14 guys under standard deals. I mean, the reason would be to maintain some flexibility and, just as importantly, avoiding the luxury tax. Avoiding the luxury tax, which is something that Tony Ressler has done in previous years. It should not come as a surprise. Under Tony Ressler, the Hawks have historically avoided the tax, to the fans' disappointment in previous years. Now, I understand why they wouldn't want to go into the luxury tax, but if they are going to, this would be a year to maybe consider. They're not going to, but it would be interesting if they at least considered it. Keeping that extra spot open gives them that chance to make an in-season addition if a player comes available, rather than committing to someone now, which honestly, it's a smart approach. I could see, either side of this, but that being said, there are pros and cons. On one hand, it does keep their options open, but on the other, it can be missing out on a player who could help right away. Especially when the Hawks are clearly trying to build that competitive team around Trae Young this season. They're trying to make a leap in the Eastern Conference and potentially be contenders and go to the NBA Finals. If they do decide to bring someone in, Houston still feels like the most logical option, and he's definitely in the lead for that spot. He's only 22 years old. He can stretch the floor, and he's shown real potential as a shooter. In 58 games with Orlando last season, he averaged 4 points in just under 14 minutes, but his efficiency was the standout. While those 4 points don't really look too impressive, this guy takes smart shots. He shot 40% from 3 on the year, and after the All-Star break, as we all know, because I've covered it on this channel several times, he hit over 50% of his threes after the All-Star break. So that actually ranked second across the entire league during that stretch, which is just super, super impressive. So the competition for that spot is likely going to come down to Caleb Houston, and then also 2 other guys. Kobe Johnson, who's also on that Exhibit 10 deal. I think people have kind of forgotten about him. Some people have been asking about him in the comment section. He's on that Exhibit 10 deal. And then also forward Jacob Toppin, who is on a 2-way contract, but he was a real Summer League standout. And this could be a guy that could potentially come in and take that last roster spot. He's been super impressive in the limited action that he has played, not only with the Hawks, but in Summer League and in the G League. So I think he's also a leading candidate. So it's going to be really interesting heading into training camp, just seeing these guys fight for that last spot. But as for now, the Hawks look prepared to head into the year with just 14 guaranteed contracts, which it's not necessarily a decision that we can judge based off of right now. We're going to have to see how this plays out in the season. So next up, let's talk about the newly acquired Kristaps Porzingis. So the Hawks had one of their best off seasons in recent memory. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They landed Kristaps Porzingis in that 3-team trade, obviously sending Georges Niang to Boston and Terrence Mann to the Brooklyn Nets, and then also the 22nd overall pick also going to the Nets. And then they signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker to that 4-year, $62 million deal, and then added Luke Kennard on a 1-year contract. Those moves aren't really relevant to what we're about to talk about, but it's just what Atlanta did immediately following the Porzingis deal that really gave national media that hint that Atlanta was about to do something big, and they were really looking to contend in a wide open Eastern Conference. I mean, for once, national media members have almost been unanimous in praising Atlanta's moves. It's really weird, all these expectations. I honestly don't really like it. Porzingis in particular has drawn a lot of attention. I mean, for obvious reasons. This is a very proven guy in the NBA. The Athletic Zach Harper actually recently released his rankings of the top 15 centers in the NBA. To the surprise of many, Porzingis landed at number 14, just one spot ahead of Oklahoma City's star Chet Holmgren. Here's the full rundown of the top 15. He had Jokic, Wemby, Embiid, Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, Alperen Şengün, Jaren Jackson, Domantas Sabonis, Evan Mobley, Ivica Zubac, Isaiah Hartenstein, and then it was Kristaps Porzingis at 14, and then Chet Holmgren at 15. For context, Porzingis is coming off of a very strong season where he averaged 19.5 points, nearly 7 boards, and 1.5 blocks per game. What stood out most, though, was his shooting. He had the best shooting season of his career. He hit over 41% of his threes, an elite number, especially for a 7'3" center. I mean, this is an unreal amount of spacing that Trae Young is about to be playing alongside, and that's going to lead into, I'm not going to start with that right now, but it's going to lead into our last topic of the video, just talking about how Trae could have his best NBA season because there is the most talent around him that he has ever had. So, I mean, to put what Porzingis did last year into perspective and how, overall effective he was before he went down, he was sick in the postseason, so we can't really blame him for playing poor in the postseason because he was dealing with a mystery illness, if you will. But also, he has his health issues, and that kind of kept him sidelined for a good bit of the year. But when he played, he was great. I mean, he tied his career high with 8 made threes on 2 separate occasions last season. He was just shooting the lights out of the basketball in 2024-25. He's now the only 7-footer in league history to have 4 career games with at least 8 threes. That's not just good shooting for a big man. That's historic shooting, period. In total, over his 9-year career, when he's averaging nearly 20 points, 8 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks per game. I mean, when healthy, there's no denying that he's one of the most unique and versatile offensive centers in basketball, and he's also a very good rim protector. Just a great two-way player that's going to be, I'm so excited to see him play in Atlanta. It makes it so exciting for the Hawks and the future outlook of this team. Whether or not KP even resigns with the team, even if this is a 1-year thing, it's going to be super interesting to see Trae Young play with the stretch big. I mean, Young has never played with a player like Porzingis. That cannot be stated with more emphasis. I mean, Porzingis is the most skilled player he has ever played with. Having a center who can space the floor to that degree while also being a rim protector and also being an underrated playmaker changes the entire dynamic of the team's offense and defense. I can't wait to see it come into action, but yeah, very interesting that national media would put Porzingis over Chet Holmgren because recency bias always kind of shifts narratives. We've seen that a lot with guys like Tyrese Halliburton after the postseason he just had. But yeah, I figured Chet Holmgren, after winning the NBA title and being a crucial part to that OKC team that just won a title, would get a little more national love than being the 15th best center in the NBA, and Kristaps Porzingis being ahead of him after the postseason that Porzingis had. Now, like we said, that wasn't necessarily his fault because he was dealing with a whole lot of stuff, but nonetheless, Porzingis was ahead of Holmgren. That's super awesome. I love to see that. So now let's shift to last year's number 1 overall pick, Zaccharie Risacher, who had a very good rookie season, but also another guy that was with the Hawks last season, Larry Nance Jr., that vet who played significant minutes when he actually played, but he was hurt for most of the season after a game against the Orlando Magic. He signed with the Cleveland Cavaliers at the not too early into this offseason, a little bit into the free agency period. I thought Atlanta would be able to bring him back, but they did not. But he actually made some comments on the Hoop Collective podcast. He made an appearance, and they did a whole section on the Hawks. And he said that he heard that Zaccharie Risacher has maybe grown a little bit taller since, his rookie season. And while it's only speculation, Nance doubled down when they asked about it. And he pointed to Risacher's size 18 shoe as evidence that he knew he still had a bunch of room to grow. I mean, this is fascinating because Zaccharie Risacher was already measured at 6'8.5" without shoes at the combine. I mean, in NBA listings, most players add an inch or two by including their shoe height, which means he's already closer to 6'10". And we don't know how much he's actually grown based off of Larry Nance Jr.'s comments because he was pretty vague when he talked about it. He definitely alluded to, he's grown a lot in his height, but also he's added a lot of strength. He's really just filling out his frame, and Zaccharie Risacher is going to be a two-way beast. If he has indeed grown even more to, if he can be like 6'10", 6'11", Atlanta could end up with a player, with elite wing skills at a very unique size. Let the Kevin Durant comparisons continue. Now, Risacher is nowhere near what KD was as a shot creator for himself. At their age, but nonetheless, Risacher has a lot of potential to grow as an on-ball creator, but right now he is such an amazing catch-and-shoot player. Kind of fits perfectly with the idea and the scheme that Atlanta is trying to build. He has such a bright future here, and especially, catching passes from Trae Young, and then also on the cuts, being located from Dyson, and then now with Kristaps Porzingis and Jalen Johnson in the front court. He's going to have a really good season. I wouldn't be surprised if he averaged like 16 or 17 points a game. He's just going to have a lot of scoring opportunity now in this offensive scheme. So, I mean, combining the height leap also with the fact that Risacher has been visibly adding muscle this offseason, and the Hawks, may have a truly special talent on their hands. I mean, his combination of size, athleticism, and defensive instincts already make him one of the most versatile young players in the league. I mean, you can put him anywhere. If his body continues to develop, he could become a nightmare matchup for years to come. The heights in the NBA are really funny just because you never really know how tall a player is. So, I mean, they'll probably go into the season with Risacher listed as 6'8", but when he's standing next to, like, Jalen Johnson or Kristaps Porzingis, we're going to see how tall he really is. I'm not saying this man is 7 feet tall, but he could get there. I mean, when he was drafted, he was just 19 years old. So, all this is just kind of a statement made from Nance Jr., and we don't really know exactly how it's gone. It highlights the buzz around Risacher, and people want to know about him. And it shows how much untapped potential he has as Atlanta's cornerstone for the future. I'm super excited about Risacher's future. I can't wait to see him in year 2. So, finally, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode with Trae Young. And this is a very interesting topic, and I wrote an article about it just yesterday, just kind of, lying down the specifics, but I want to kind of back up the case here. So every year, the MVP award goes to the best of the best. I mean, the players who not only put up great numbers, but also led their teams to elite regular season success. I mean, we're talking like top 2 seed in their respective conference. Last year's finalists, as we all know, were Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, with SGA ultimately taking home the award after leading the Thunder to a historic 68-14 record. It was one of the best teams ever. SGA led the way. He certainly deserved that MVP award, but that season was really dominant. It honestly was one of the best individual seasons ever. Looking ahead, Jokic and SGA are certainly going to be the favorites once again. Giannis, however, may be someone who's at a little bit of a disadvantage because of the weaker supporting cast that he has been surrounded by in Milwaukee. And now both Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton, while they weren't going to be MVP candidates, they are both expected to miss the season due to injuries the entire season. So that opens the door for a new name to enter the MVP conversation. Could that name be Trae Young? Statistically, Trae has always been elite, as we all know. Trae's our guy. He led the NBA in total assists last season and assists per game. He averaged 11.6 per game, had 880 total assists. I mean, the best mark in the league for both of those categories. He did this even while, dealing with the major injuries to teammates like Jalen Johnson and Clint Capella. His shot creation and playmaking had Atlanta near the top of the league in shot quality, although their actual shooting percentages held them back. They were in the bottom half of the league in three-point percentage. So with that, top shot quality in the NBA, now this is where the offseason comes into play, because the new additions like Kristaps Porzingis, Luke Kennard, and potentially Caleb Houston. We don't know the specifics on that yet. I mean, we know the specifics, but we don't know if Atlanta is going to go through with giving him that full contract. All of these guys shot over 40% from deep last season. The Hawks, they've surrounded Trae with shooters, and the shooters that he's needed his entire career. Also, a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's not a 40% free three-point shooter, but he shot 38.1% last season. So, I mean, this is a guy who certainly could shoot over 40% last year. this upcoming season. We've also got V. Krejci on the team, who shot 43% last season, and then improving three-point shooters like Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu. Elite catch-and-shoot guys like Zaccharie Risacher, also another improving shooter, Dyson Daniels. It's really just the best team Trae has ever had. I mean, this result could be a season where his scoring numbers drop slightly, but his efficiency and assist totals skyrocket, and that's crazy to say considering how much he's been able to do. Passing the ball. I mean, something in the range of like 22 points and 13 or 14 assists per game is entirely possible. And that might sound a little unusual for an MVP, but just remember Steve Nash in his peak years, during his back-to-back MVP years that most of you, I'm sure, know about. Nash averaged fewer than 19 points per game, but one because of his efficiency and team success and the way he was just sharing the basketball. Trae has a very, very similar opportunity here now. I don't know if they would give it to a guy like that in the year 2025, just with how much these players are scoring the ball. It's going to be hard to keep up with a guy like Jokic or Shea or Luka, but he has a similar opportunity. If the Hawks win enough games and he keeps that efficiency under control and he's not turning the ball over as much and he's averaging league leading assists again, and the Hawks are the 1 or 2 seed in the East, he seriously should be considered as the most valuable player. At the very least, I think he'll be top 5. And I think this is going to be a very pivotal season for him, especially in what could be a contract year. And, with the Eastern Conference wide open, Atlanta could be in the absolute perfect position to make that leap. A Trae Young MVP run would be one of the most compelling stories in basketball. I mean, going from the most hated and disrespected player in the NBA, with all the limitations that he has, and becoming an MVP and maybe leading your team to a championship, it would be inspirational. It's a long shot, but given the circumstances, there may never be a better chance for him to shock the world than this season, guys. This could be the one. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Hawks Latest. We covered a lot today, but from Caleb Housen's roster situation, a little more on that, and then Kristaps Porzingis ranking over Chet Holmgren, which is just awesome. Zaccharie Risacher's potential growth into a two-way beast, and of course the possibility of Trae Young making a serious MVP push in the 2025-26 season. This is shaping up to be one of the most exciting seasons in recent Hawks history, and we'll be here every step of the way to break it all down when it tips off on October 22nd against the Toronto Raptors. So if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update here on Hawks Latest. We're going to be bumping out videos every single day, keeping you guys informed on the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. But drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Do you think Atlanta should sign Houston to that 15th spot, or should it go to a guy like Jacob Toppin or Kobe Johnson, the brother of Jalen Johnson? Where would you rank Kristaps Porzingis among NBA centers? Do you think he's better than Chet Holmgren in the year 2025? I think so. I certainly agree with that, but that's going to be a little bit of a hot take. And most importantly, is this finally the year where Trae Young breaks into MVP conversation and really cements a name for himself in the NBA? Thank you guys for watching once again. I'm Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and I'll see you guys next time.